The new Chancellor indicates major changes to Liz Truss's entire economic strategy. Jeremy Hunt said mistakes had been made by the government and that some taxes will rise to reassure the financial markets.
I do want to be straight. We've got some difficult decisions. If we take those difficult decisions, the future is very encouraging for this country.
Meanwhile, the Governor of the Bank of England says interest rates may need to rise by more than previously expected. Also on tonight's programme, in Iran, a fire breaks out at Tehran's state prison on a day of protests in a number of cities. The husband and wife team behind one of the most successful COVID vaccines believe the same technology could help transform cancer treatment. And in rugby league, England's men open their World Cup campaign with a convincing win against Samoa in Newcastle. Good evening. The new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has indicated there'll be major changes to Liz Truss's entire economic strategy. In a round of interviews this morning, Mr. Hunt said mistakes had been made by the government and warned of what he called very difficult decisions ahead. He suggested taxes could rise to help restore market confidence and also talked about spending cuts. Mr. Hunt was appointed yesterday after the Prime Minister sacked his predecessor, Kwasi Kwarteng. Here's our political correspondent, Ben Wright.
Congratulations, Mr. Chancellor.
The fourth Chancellor in as many months. Jeremy Hunt's job now is to try and urgently calm financial markets. He has just 2 weeks to write a budget that looks set to junk many of the Prime Minister's signature policies. On Wednesday, Liz Truss said she was absolutely not planning public spending cuts. But listen to this.
We have some very difficult decisions ahead. Difficult decisions on spending, which is not going to rise as much as people hope, and I'm going to be asking all government departments to find additional efficiency savings. That's going
One person's efficiency savings is another person's cuts.
Yes.
During the Tory leadership contest, Liz Truss said the country couldn't tax its way to economic growth. But now
we're also going to have pressure on the tax side. Taxes are not going to come down by as much as people hoped, and some taxes will have to go up.
Then there was the Prime Minister's pledge to boost defence spending to 3% of national income by 2030.
But the Defence Department too is going to have to help find efficiencies. The long-term ability to fund an increase in defence spending will depend on stability in the economic situation and a healthily growing economy.
Spending cuts and tax rises is not what Liz Truss planned when she entered number 10 last month. But the economic and political turmoil that followed her first Chancellor's mini-budget has forced a fundamental rethink, plunging her premiership into chaos. Yesterday, the smiles had gone, and the Prime Minister's appearance in number 10 did little to convince her Tory party critics that she's up to the job. Some believe her future now hinges on the Chancellor's budget at the end of this month.
If that package doesn't work and the markets are still reacting all over the place, then I think she is in considerable trouble. She's admitted mistakes, and if she admits those mistakes and puts them right, then I think she could conceivably get beyond this. But I emphasise could, because I think it all depended on that financial statement on the 31st of October.
The opposition said the Prime Minister's government was now clinging on.
They didn't just tank the British economy. They also clung on as they made the pound sink, clung on as they took our pensions to the brink of collapse, clung on as they pushed the mortgages and bills of the British public through the roof. They did all of this.
Questions?
Liz Truss clearly wants to battle on, hoping this turmoil will subside. But behind her, in Parliament, sits a fractious, even mutinous party. Some think it would be mad to try and oust the Prime Minister already. Others say keeping her in place would be worse. Rebuilding her political credibility will not be easy. Ben Wright, BBC News.
Well, the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, spoke to the new Chancellor yesterday, and he said there was a clear meeting of minds on the importance of stability. This afternoon, Mr. Bailey also warned of the possibility of higher interest rates ahead, more than previously expected. Our business correspondent, Mark Ashdown, has this analysis.
Maria, hi.
All smiles launching the mini-budget at the end of September, and with it a new political phrase, Trussonomics, describing Liz Truss's vision for a high-growth, high-wage, low-tax economy. But just 3 weeks later, her new Chancellor has buried it.
Have you been given a clean slate? Can you change elements of the mini-budget if you want to?
Yes, and the fundamental thing the Prime Minister wants me to do and I need to do is to be completely honest with the country.
Trussonomics reversed then. Tax cuts likely replaced with tax rises. Huge investment replaced with a spending slowdown. This rethink has largely been driven by the turmoil in the financial markets since the mini-budget was announced. The pound has had a torrid time. The effective cost of government borrowing has soared, and the Bank of England had to step in with an emergency programme buying up government bonds to stabilise the pension sector. There is a pressing need then to restore some confidence and credibility.
Andrew.
Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said he spoke to the new Chancellor yesterday and had an immediate meeting of minds. But in a speech in Washington, he had this warning on interest rates.
We will not hesitate to raise interest rates to meet the inflation target. And as things stand today, my best guess is that inflationary pressures will require a stronger response than we perhaps thought in August.
The current base rate is 2.25%. Investors are expecting a rise of up to 1 percentage point in November to 3.25%. Most mortgage offers are currently already around 6%, but a bigger rise in the base rate will affect the economy elsewhere. And even with a change of approach, the government's problems remain the same. How to find tens of billions of pounds to help people with their energy bills and make the sums add up.
We're certainly looking at a really tough couple of years. We've got a very tough economic environment. We've got very stretched public finances. I think we're going to see some even further reversal of the tax cuts that we've had. And in addition, probably some very tight spending rounds.
The first verdict will come when financial markets open next week.
I don't expect a dramatic reversal because the devil will be in the detail. And when we find out the detail of the budget on the 31st of October, that'll be perhaps a more holistic judgment being made by financial markets.
That's a fortnight away, a long time in the life of a Chancellor. Mark Ashdown, BBC News.
And our political correspondent Ben Wright is with me now. So Ben, can Liz Truss hang on to her job?
Well, as one Tory MP said to me today, it looks like the Prime Minister is in office, but not in power. And remember, Anita, it was only 40 days ago that Liz Truss arrived in Downing Street promising to rip up Treasury orthodoxy and ignite economic growth with a raft of unfunded tax cuts. But in the weeks of turmoil that followed, we now have the new Chancellor burying that agenda. It has gone. We have seen a political implosion without precedent. Jeremy Hunt is now a very powerful Chancellor in a very weakened government, and he now goes back to the drawing board to try and concoct a budget that can both reassure the markets but also be palatable politically to the Tory party, and that is going to be difficult. There are some on the right who are very angry that this tax-cutting agenda seems to have been binned for now, while many others are furious that Liz Truss has led her government into this mess, and some are talking privately about trying to turf her out. Only a month into the job, that is an extraordinary and precarious place for Liz Truss to be.
Ben, thank you very much. There's been more unrest in Iran, including at the Evin prison in Tehran, which houses hundreds of political prisoners and dozens of dual nationals. Iranian state media says a fire broke out in the jail after clashes, but that it's now under control. It follows another day of anti-government protests in several cities. Demonstrations began last month in response to the death in custody of a young woman detained for allegedly not wearing her hijab correctly. Duncan Kennedy reports.
This is Ardabil, northwest of Tehran, where protesters have started using rocks to take on the authorities. Some are shouting "Death to the Supreme Leader," a slogan heard a lot in recent weeks. This is also believed to be Ardabil, but this time the authorities appear to have the upper hand. The Iranian government has brutal control of the media, but using a variety of techniques, the BBC has now named a total of 45 people, including children, who've died since the protests began. Many of the demonstrations are still being driven by young women and school children. It's nearly a month since these protests began, following the death in police custody of a 22-year-old woman.
Thrilled to welcome
Speaking in California yesterday, President Biden said the death of Mahsa Amini has roused deep feelings in Iran.
It stunned me what it awakened in Iran. And it's awakened something that I don't think will be quieted in a long, long time.
In another development tonight, shots have been heard at Tehran's Evin prison after what state media say has been a riot. The jail has been set on fire. Hundreds of political prisoners and journalists are held at the prison. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
Turkey says 41 people are known to have died in a coal mine near the Black Sea coast after a suspected methane explosion on Friday. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has visited the site at Amasra and promised a thorough investigation. The footballer Mason Greenwood has been charged with attempted rape, engaging in controlling and coercive behaviour, and assault occasioning actual bodily harm. The 21-year-old Manchester United striker was first arrested on suspicion of rape and assault in January and was immediately suspended from playing or training by the club. He was rearrested earlier today for allegedly breaching bail conditions. The husband and wife team behind one of the most successful COVID vaccines say they believe the same technology could help transform cancer treatment. Ugur Sahin and Özlem Türeci, who founded the German company BioNTech, also said they would fight claims by a rival company that they infringed patents in their COVID jab. Our medical editor Fergus Walsh reports.
If you have a COVID booster this autumn, whether it's the Pfizer-BioNTech or Moderna jabs, they both rely on a new type of vaccine technology known as mRNA.
All done.
Among the pioneers were husband and wife team professors Ugur Sahin and Özlem Türeci, who founded BioNTech.
Professor Sahin, Professor Türeci.
Speaking to Sunday with Laura Kunsberg, the doctor said mRNA is showing promise in cancer studies where patients receive a personalised vaccine to prompt their immune system to attack their disease.
Every step, every patient we treat in our cancer trials helps us to find out more about what we are against and how to address that. Yeah. Therefore, as scientists, we are always hesitant to say we will have a cure for cancer. We have a number of breakthroughs and we will continue to work on them.
But it may be several years before we know if trials in bowel cancer, melanoma and other tumour types really do live up to the hype. COVID vaccines, though, have been highly successful and made billions for BioNTech. But rival firm Moderna has started legal action for patent infringement, in essence claiming key elements of their mRNA technology were copied. BioNTech says it will vigorously defend against the allegations.
Our innovations are original. Yeah? We have spent 20 years of research in developing this type of treatments, and of course we will fight for our intellectual property.
These patent disputes won't stop the rollout of COVID vaccines. mRNA technology came of age in the pandemic. The question now is, can it take on cancer? Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
England's men have made a winning start to their Rugby League World Cup campaign with a 60-6 victory against Samoa in Newcastle. The hosts scored 10 tries, much to the delight of the home crowd, as Adam Wilde reports.
The Rugby League World has had to wait. A year later than planned, but a tournament unlike any the game has seen before. It was being branded as the biggest, the best in the sport's history. It had a lot to live up to. Frustratingly, that wait would go on a little longer. Major technical problems meant the opening ceremony was curtailed. It was left to the players to make their own introductions, Samoa building the atmosphere as only they can. England were going to need something special. The occasion definitely needed it. Young star Jack Welsby suddenly on hand to provide it.
England find a little bit of magic.
And with that, the moment the World Cup came alive. Dom Young, whose family is from Newcastle, he plays in Newcastle in Australia, now delighting the English crowd in Newcastle. Many have tipped him to be a standout star of this tournament. It isn't hard to see why.
It's a combination of circus tricks and Superman.
The first half scoreline more comfortable than many expected. In the second, England's World Cup charge really took off. 10 tries in total in a dominant display of power.
England unstoppable.
We did lots of good things. I never expected that sort of scoreline, but we can get better. We'll improve on a few things, be better for next week. But I'm very happy with the win, no doubt about that.
And so the result England desperately wanted, the hosts off to a perfect start. And for the wider rugby league world, relief that this World Cup is finally underway. Adam Wilde, BBC News in Newcastle.
And that's about it for now. But before we go, just to say that the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, and the Shadow Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, will be joining Laura Kuenssberg tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, where you can also see that BioNTech interview in full. That's all from me and the rest of the team. Good night.